Out of, I think it's about 300 songs that John and I wrote together, we never had a dry session.
At 83, has finally done something the world has waited half a century for. He's spoken without filters, without managers, and without the polished diplomacy that usually surrounds him. For decades, the man who helped redefine modern music through the Beatles and beyond has been the center of myths, half-truths, and endless interpretations. Was he the reason the Beatles broke up? Did he resent? Did fame really tear their friendship apart? And what did he really think of the artificial resurrection of John's voice through modern AI recordings? After years of silence, decided to set the record straight in a recent in-depth interview that felt more like a confession than a press appearance. Calm but direct, he looked straight into the camera and said, "People think they know what happened, but they really don't." The words landed like a thunderclap across social media, igniting new debates among fans who thought every Beatles secret had already been uncovered. For the first time, the world wasn't hearing the diplomat or the performer, they were hearing the man. His tone carried the gravity of someone aware that time is finite and stories can't stay distorted forever. And while his revelations weren't scandalous, they were deeply human, peeling back layers of rumor that had shadowed him for 60 years. But that was only the beginning, because what went on to reveal next didn't just rewrite fan theories, it challenged the emotional history of the Beatles themselves. Legend, legacy, and the weight of silence. For years has carried the dual weight of legend and blame, a strange curse that comes with being one of the most famous living musicians on the planet. He was adored. As a solo artist, he was, but as history evolved, so did the narratives that painted him in shades of both genius and guilt. Whenever people spoke of the Beatles' breakups, name often came with an asterisk. The man who filed the lawsuit that legally ended the band, the one who was supposedly too controlling, too commercial, or too eager to move on. Yet known for his calm professionalism, almost never lashed back. He let the rumors breathe, the stories twist, the documentaries distort. He chose silence, perhaps out of dignity, perhaps out of exhaustion. But as the years turned into decades, that silence became its own kind of story. To newer generations raised on YouTube clips and streaming playlists, wasn't the vibrant 20-something who wrote "Hey." He was the aging symbol of an era fading into myth. Every few years, a quote from him or an old recording reignited debate. Was he the perfectionist who drove away, or the loyal friend who tried to keep the dream alive? People forget, once said, we were just lads who wanted to make good songs, not gods, not rivals. And yet, even that humility was often twisted into defensiveness. For 6 decades, he carried those narratives quietly, as if waiting for the right moment to speak, and now at 83, that moment had come. The world didn't just want another Beatles anecdote, they wanted closure. They wanted truth from the only man left who had lived through both the creation and the collapse of the greatest band in history. But as revealed in his latest conversation, the truth wasn't nearly as simple or as forgiving as fans had imagined. The rumors that never let go. No matter how many decades passed, the shadows of rumor followed like echoes he could never fully silence. From the wild conspiracy theories claiming he'd secretly died in the 1960s and been replaced by a lookalike, to the endless speculation that he resented John's brilliance or clashed with George Harrison's spirituality, his name remained tangled in folklore as much as in fact. Every era brought a new wave of whispers, that he manipulated the band's business decisions, that he pushed too hard for control, that he never truly forgave for changing the group's chemistry. Some fans even claimed that behind the smiles and old footage, there lingered bitterness too deep to fade, but ever the pragmatist rarely took the bait. "I get it," he once laughed in a BBC interview. "The truth's never exciting enough for people." Yet even laughter couldn't drown out decades of speculation. The modern age only amplified it. On social media, clips from old arguments were re-edited into viral proof of tension. AI-generated videos faked long-lost conversations, and entire podcasts were dedicated to decoding every lyric for hidden meaning. It was as if the Beatles' breakup had become an unsolved crime and the prime suspect. When new projects emerged, like the now and then single resurrected through artificial intelligence in 2023, the debates flared up again. Did it overstep by reviving his voice digitally, or was it an act of love and preservation? The internet split in half. Some called it exploitation, others called it closure. Through it all, stayed composed, letting art speak where he once let silence reign. But in 2025, as he finally spoke out in his most candid conversation yet, he didn't just address the rumors, he dismantled them. One by one, with the patience of a man who had nothing left to prove, began untangling 6 decades of distortion. And the first revelation stunned everyone who thought they already knew the story. The moment he finally responds. When finally decided to speak, he didn't do it through a PR statement or a glossy magazine cover. He did it in an unfiltered sit-down interview that felt more like an overdue conversation than a media event. Dressed simply, his voice carried that familiar Liverpool warmth, but this time there was gravity behind every word. "People think I was the one who ended it," he said, but it had already fallen apart long before any paper was signed. With that sentence, 60 years of finger-pointing started to crumble. Revealed that by the time he filed the legal paperwork to dissolve the Beatles, the others were already pursuing solo ambitions. John had told us he wanted out months before, he explained. I just wanted to make it official so we could all move forward without pretending. His tone wasn't bitter, it was weary, almost reflective. For the first time, fans could see how deeply the breakup had wounded him, not as a businessman, but as a brother losing his family. He also touched on S's role, dismissing the long-held blame the public placed on her. Didn't break us up, he said plainly. We broke ourselves. The internet erupted. Headlines spread overnight, calling it S's final confession. But beyond the sensationalism, there was something profoundly human about it, an old man finally unburdening himself from 6 decades of myth. When asked about his decision to use AI to restore John's vocals for Now and Then, smiled wistfully. It wasn't science, he said, it was friendship. I just wanted to finish what we started. That single line silenced even the harshest critics. It wasn't about technology or nostalgia, it was about closure. This revelation wasn't explosive in the tabloid sense, it was cleansing. After years of distortion, he had finally reclaimed his truth, speaking not as an icon, but as the last witness to a story the world thought it already knew. Why it matters in 2025. The impact of S's words in 2025 went far beyond nostalgia. It was a cultural reset. For years, music history had been frozen in speculation, documentaries, and fan theories that painted fragmented portraits of the Beatles' final days. But hearing S's raw clarity, unfiltered and unguarded, gave the world something they didn't realize they'd been missing: perspective. Younger generations who had grown up idolizing legends through curated social media moments suddenly witnessed what honesty looked like from someone who had actually lived it. His confession wasn't about rewriting history, it was about reclaiming it from noise. Fans flooded online forums, posting clips of the interview alongside old Beatles footage, noting how his expressions now made sense in hindsight. Even critics who once labeled him controlling or calculating softened their tone, admitting that perhaps he'd been carrying more emotional weight than anyone realized. He didn't defend himself, one columnist wrote, he explained himself. The difference was everything. His comments about and delivered with empathy rather than defensiveness struck a generation now obsessed with accountability and healing. The timing, too, was poetic. As modern artists openly battled record labels, AI blurred artistic boundaries, and authenticity became currency, S's message landed like an artistic integrity. Fame is borrowed, he said in one striking line, but friendship is earned. That quote went viral overnight, trending across X and TikTok as creators dissected its meaning. For a man who had once embodied the chaos of Beatlemania, to still be teaching the world about humility 6 decades later was nothing short of extraordinary. What made it resonate wasn't just what he said, but how he said it: calm, reflective, without bitterness. In an industry built on reinvention, had quietly redefined legacy itself. But the story didn't end there, because his next move proved he wasn't done making history just yet. A closer look at his recent moves. Even at 83, refuses to fade into the background. While most artists of his generation have long stepped away from the spotlight, has found new ways to evolve without surrendering his authenticity. Following his tell-all revelations, he surprised fans with a series of intimate performances across small venues in the UK and US, blending acoustic classics with stripped-down versions of Beatles songs that felt more like conversations than concerts. Gone were the pyrotechnics and stadium anthems. In their place stood a man reconnecting with his roots, sharing stories behind songs that had defined entire generations. He also opened up about his creative process in a way he never had before, revealing that he had been quietly experimenting with AI-driven tools to restore unfinished recordings from the Beatles' archives. Technology isn't the enemy, he said in a recent interview. It's how you use it that defines whether it's art or imitation. His stance resonated deeply in an age where artificial intelligence threatens to blur the line between human emotion and digital perfection. Explained that he used AI not to replace creativity, but to preserve it, to rescue the soul in voices, instruments, and moments long buried in tape hiss. The project culminated in the long-awaited Now and Then single, which reignited global Beatlemania in a way no one thought possible in the 21st century. Beyond Music has taken a reflective turn, dedicating time to his memoirs and advocating for environmental and humanitarian causes, reminding the world that his influence extends far beyond melody. In interviews, he often laughs about his age, saying, "I'm not done yet, I still hear songs in my dreams." And fans believe him because his career has never been about clinging to the past. It's about evolving with grace, proving that even at 83, creativity doesn't expire, it only deepens. But as he continued redefining what legacy means, one final question lingered: how does himself want to be remembered when the music finally stops? What's next in the legacy question? When asked recently how he envisions his legacy, chuckled softly before giving an answer that silenced the room. "I've already had my miracle," he said. "Everything else is just a lovely encore." It was the kind of statement only someone who has made peace with history could deliver, humble, wise, and tinged with melancholy. For the idea of legacy isn't about monuments or platinum plaques, it's about connection. He often speaks of how music allowed him to stay close to John, George Harrison, and even his younger self. In his home studio, there are framed photos of those early days, 4 young men in matching suits, unaware they were about to change the world. Sometimes I look at those photos and think, who are those lads? He confessed in a BBC segment. That mix of nostalgia and disbelief defines twilight years, a man who lived several lifetimes within one, now trying to make sense of it all. He said that what drives him now isn't fame but gratitude, a need to honor the people who shaped him and the fans who never stopped listening. His current projects, from reissuing archival material to mentoring young artists, show an artist passing the torch rather than guarding it. Yet beneath the calm, there's also awareness of time's urgency. Friends say has become more reflective lately, speaking candidly about mortality, loss, and what truly matters when the applause fades. "I don't want to be remembered for being clever," he once told an interviewer. "I'd rather be remembered for being kind." Those words have become something of a mantra among his fans, shared endlessly across social media. For a man who has written songs that define love, hope, and heartbreak, his greatest message in 2025 might be his simplest. That legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's the love you give while you're still here. And in that quiet wisdom, has found a way to outlast even time itself. As the world digests revelations, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. He has spent a lifetime living inside his own legend, yet never once stopped being human beneath it. The man who once wrote "Yesterday" and "Let It Be" isn't chasing immortality, he's seeking peace. His decision to finally set the record straight at 83 wasn't an act of rebellion or ego, it was an act of release. After decades of carrying myths, rivalries, and ghost stories on his shoulders, has handed the narrative back to the world, saying in essence, "Hear what really happened, believe what you will." In doing so, he reminded us that the truth, like music, doesn't belong to one person, it belongs to everyone who listens. His confession also reveals something hauntingly beautiful about aging in the public eye. That wisdom doesn't come from perfection, but from endurance. The same young man who once sang about love and revolution now speaks softly about forgiveness and acceptance, proving that evolution is the truest measure of genius. In 2025 isn't just a rock star or a billionaire musician, he's the living embodiment of what it means to grow up in front of the world and still hold onto grace. As fans continue to share clips of his interview, dissect his quotes, and debate what it all means, one moment stands out. When asked if he still speaks to John in his thoughts, smiled faintly and said, "Every day." That single answer carried more weight than any revelation could. It was closure, love, and legacy wrapped into one line, the kind of truth that can't be scripted or staged. And as he continues to sing to sold-out crowds and quiet rooms alike, one thing is certain: has not just told his story, he's rewritten how legends say goodbye, not with a grand finale, but with honesty, heart, and the courage to finally let the past rest in peace.